The person I experienced was deeply ambivalent and very unsure about whether he actually wants to run for office again. And I think talking for hours and hours to somebody like me was one way of finding out how the answers felt to these very strange questions that one has to ask. And I also think that he wanted to see what the reaction is to this big piece that's now, about to be published. And I think that's what he's going to be basing the decision to run on.
In other words, he's watching you and me right now, and he's deciding whether or not he should run based on how snarky and obnoxious my interview with you is.
Well, I have to tell you, the most surprising thing about interviewing him was that of all the difficult and sort of embarrassing questions that I had to ask, the easiest ones would seem to be, do you want to run for office? Do you want to run for mayor? How will you decide whether you're going to run for office? And those were the ones that were the most difficult for him to answer, where the pauses were the most uncomfortably long. So he's like the very essence to me of ambivalence about whether he wants to get back into politics or not. So I think, I think he's trying to figure it out.
At one point in the interview, he says something really interesting. He says, quote, "I want to ask people to give me a second chance. I do want to have that conversation with people whom I let down and with people who put their faith in me and who wanted to support me. I think to some degree I do want to say to them, give me another chance." How much of this is about, and it's difficult to judge this, I guess, for somebody who is a public servant, a politician, but how much of this is about politics, and how much of this is about redemption?
It's a very good question. I think that a big part of him wants to kind of cleanse himself of this scandal in more ways than one. Politically speaking, some people think that he may very well be running for mayor, a race that he probably can't win, to do that very thing, to cleanse himself of the scandal, to be able to move on, to run for another office and be able to say, we've discussed this, we've moved on. But on the other hand, personally, it's hard for me to imagine that he wants this to be the last note of his public life. So, I think it's clearly part of what's happening here. Some redemption is definitely part of the formula for what's happening.